سبحان من تعن الوجوه لجوده وله سجود أوجه عجباه سبحان من شهدت بوحدته الورى رب تعالى لا إله سواه.
We love Muhammad, oh yes we do. He is our prophet, to him we're true. Blessed Rasulullah, it's you. Muhammad, we love you.
I'm Sister Noor, and welcome to We Love Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
أنا مسلم أعرف أن الله واحد.
حرف الباء ب.
ستكون نسخة مسجلة موجودة على نور آرت ويب سايت.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. May peace and blessing be with you. Welcome again to our program Path to Guidance. In this program, we share the experiences of people from many walks of life through the spiritual journey they take until they arrive to their spiritual home in Islam. The steps they take are unique to every one of them. And today with me, Sister Noor Saadeh. We are at her home in Dallas, Texas, to share her story with you, to learn from her experience, and to be inspired by her steps, by her attitude, and by what she found in Islam herself. Sister Noor, thank you for having us at your home.
You're very welcome. Welcome, welcome. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. We're glad to be with you, and we're glad to share your unique story
Inshallah.
with our
my
viewers.
pleasure, my honor, inshallah.
And what I want you to start with, as usual, we ask all of our guests, they share their backgrounds, they share their educational background, career background, and what attracted them to Islam. So would you please start by telling us where you grew up, what you studied, what did you do before you came in contact with Islam?
Inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Praise and blessings be upon Allah, the creator and sustainer of the universe. I was born Sherry Van Wyck, that's my maiden given name, in a small town in Wisconsin, Appleton, which is as apple pie sounding as it appears. Very small, conservative little town, Midwestern, and born to a Christian family, not terribly practicing. My family were part of the United Church of Christ. It's what it's called today. They were Congregationalists, which is a church that doesn't have a lot of particular ritual and things like that, or any pomp and circumstance. Very kind of a simple church, a lot of great music. And I grew up in a moderately musical family. My mother was an amateur singer, and I heard music in the house all the time. I would go to sleep with lullabies of barbershop harmony, which is a very tight kind of harmony. My mother was a member of the Sweet Adelines chorus, and they used to have small groups that rehearsed at home. So I would fall asleep to the sounds of music at night, and it seems I could sing from the time I was born. And I heard harmonies naturally. My mom and I used to sing in the car everywhere we went, and I would add the harmony at a very young age. And we also had a piano in the house, painted pink. We had a pink dining room, and my mother had an old upright she painted pink, and I used to, play on a little bit. And I had a babysitter that taught me at 5 years of age a watered-down version, a childlike version of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata.
Wow.
And I was interested in the piano right away, and I would play around a little bit with it. And my parents said, okay, let's wait and see if this is a phase or not. And by the time I reached 8, I was playing it and loving it so much. So they bought me a real piano, a Wurlitzer, and sent me off for piano lessons. At the same time, my piano teacher had always had a small group of girls that performed locally for nursing homes, for little civic organizations and things, Masonic lodges and things like that. They used to have even a television program at Christmas time on a local TV station. Those girls were getting to be about middle school, didn't want to go out singing and dressed alike and, you know, making gestures and movement on the stage. She needed a new group of girls, and she had 2 daughters that sang. And I played piano with her, but she also knew that I sang. So we adopted another girl, and we were all girls of Dutch background. Our last name was Van something, so we were called the Vanettes.
The Vanettes.
4 of us. We dressed alike. We had little, you know, gestures we did, and we sang 4-part harmony. And we traveled all around central Wisconsin singing and getting paid for it. So I actually was a professional singer at the age of 8. We had a little half-hour Christmas program on the local TV stations every year. And I love singing, I love performing. And it was always sort of my goal. I would look around the nursing homes for someone who looked really sad and really lonely, and I'm going to make that person smile. I'm going to work on them through the entire performance until I sort of lighten their day a little bit.
Beautiful.
So many years later when I became a Muslim, I actually realized in hindsight I was more about the message and more about reaching people with a message than I was about music so much. But at that time in my life, music was the vehicle. And we grew up very connected to nature. My father was a hunter, fisherman, my brother the same. My mother is someone who loved nature. And I think that religion for us was outdoors. We found God in his signs, interestingly enough, in his ayats, which we talk about in Islam. So we would remember God by looking at, you know, the formation of geese, you know, migrating at different times of the year, or the deer in the woods.
So basically, your book was the universe.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And that's how you recognized God. And you worshiped him by being grateful for what was around you, and being grateful that God gave you a talent and so forth. And through the years, I went into middle school and would take the leads in the school musicals, walked into high school my first year and took the lead in the school musical. So I was already sort of on a path at that time. I knew I wanted to be somehow in performance and probably music because I played piano, I sang, and was starting to dream about college and getting a degree in vocal performance. And actually, in looking back too, it was a very healthy thing for a high school student to have that extracurricular activity. I didn't go the way of so many kids in the late 60s, early 70s into the drugs and things like that, or the peer pressure, because I had the music. You know, we had to be responsible, we were dedicated, you had to be in good shape.
And it requires a certain amount of disciplines that...
Exactly, a lot of disciplines, you know, and we had our group. We didn't care what other people thought of us, we had our little core group. When we weren't in class, we were in the fine arts wing of the building. And I say to a lot of the young Muslim audiences, you know, get involved in those extracurricular activities at school that really kind of help you out of that mainstream peer pressure that hits people. Wonderful. So again, in hindsight, which of course is always 20/20, I realized I was very blessed that way, to have that focus in high school. Then went into college, majored in vocal performance, and after college you start doing internships and things like with opera companies and so forth.
So in college you studied music also?
Yeah. I have a Bachelor of Music in applied, what they call applied voice, which is vocal performance. And as a young person, although my parents liked barbershop harmony or the popular music of the day, I was always drawn to classical music. From that time I played that little Moonlight Sonata as a child, I love the classics more than anything else. And I had teachers, mashallah, that facilitated that. I had a very good teacher in middle school and high school who was my mentor and saw that in me and helped feed that, subhanAllah. So, and I was able to take some classes in high school, such as music theory and music history. So I was very well prepared when I got to college.
So you expanded. Now you have the knowledge plus the talent.
Yeah.
Not just a performance. Yeah. Now you are into the business.
Yeah. And classical music was basically, your options were opera, of course, and for the big voices, and concert music, which was not as, your roles were not as frequent. That would be like someone singing in an ensemble with an orchestra and a full chorus and the soloist out in front. And then there was my favorite, which was the art song, which was just you and a pianist making beautiful music together, the great composers like Schumann, Brahms, Schubert, things like this. And it was just beautiful, beautiful music coupled with gorgeous poetry of Shakespeare, of Goethe, of German. And that was the nth degree for me. It's just the two of you sensing each other's feelings and when you're going to move and how you're going to move together, and just the two of you alone on a stage making this gorgeous music together. But there are very few of people in that profession. It has to be a very incredible voice, and not too many. A lot of opera singers. And opera was just fun. Opera was running around a stage and acting and singing and silly stories, gorgeous music with very silly stories, meaningless stories, usually a triangular love affair, 2 guys and a girl, 2 girls and a guy. This is setting the way for my Muslim days later on. So I was doing that, and I was singing regional opera and concert work throughout the United States and making audition trips to Germany. I traveled over to Germany and Austria a number of times. And interestingly, when I would go there, particularly over toward Vienna, I would start to see the architecture change. Suddenly everything were rounded domes, whereas you usually saw church spires like this. But you started seeing these rounded cupolas, and I would ask everybody, where does that architecture come from? That's so interesting. Is it Eastern European, or what is that? No one knew. And my favorite cathedral in Vienna turned out to be something that, if you took away the gold and the glitz and the statues, looked very much like a mosque, like a masjid. Interesting, even in those days.
So it was obvious.
Something was already calling me.
Influence.
Yes, subhanAllah. And of course, we know that the Ottomans got as far as knocking on the doors of Vienna, so I think that was some of their influence too. But in looking back, I start to see all these interesting parallels. So eventually, with the singing, you want to head for New York. And I got to New York. And wasn't singing full-time right away. And usually what musicians do is we go off and do temporary clerical work. And because we're dedicated and we're responsible and we are disciplined, we usually take quite good people to send out to somebody who's missing a secretary or a receptionist or a word processor that day. And that was a way to support my fledgling career. And also we were given, there were opportunities to be the soloist in a large church in Manhattan, which was a paid job. And we would sing with every denomination of Christian. We would have Jewish synagogue jobs on Friday nights. We would do the Jewish High Holy Days services.
Well, that's interesting.
So I was exposed to all different kinds of denominations of Christian. I was exposed to more or less the Reformed Jewish communities. And artists, often, like if you recall the Beatles in their day, they started playing around with different philosophies and meditation, transcendental meditation and things. Artists are always exploring, we're kind of emotional people, and we're always exploring different theologies, philosophies. And the group I chummed with would bring in Buddhist speakers, and they'd all kind of practice Buddhism for a while, or they'd bring in someone that was teaching Zen. And I would sit back on the sidelines and say, okay, that's all fine, interesting, but it's not for me. And I recall thinking, just before I met some Muslims for the first time, I recall thinking that, it really isn't fair to say one religion is right, because it's really kind of an accident of birth, isn't it? Depending where you're born, that's what you worship, that's how you worship. If you're born in the United States, most likely you're a Christian. If you're born in Israel, most likely you're a Jew. If you're born in India, most likely you're Hindu, and so forth. So we really can't say one is right, because it's a matter, it's an accident of birth, really. It's kind of where God plopped you down.
That's right. And
what matters is you get to God, you get to Him, not how you get to Him. And as a Christian, our family wasn't one to worship Jesus. If you prayed to God. Jesus was almost in our minds this really wonderful, loving man. And we admired Him tremendously, but we didn't pray to Him, we didn't ask Him, we didn't worship Jesus.
I meet many Christians who did the same thing. They worshipped God, and Jesus was the messenger.
Exactly, very much as we look at Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that sort of made things easier down the road too. But of course, I love Jesus, and I love the stories around Him, and
beautiful.
And I didn't really explore it much further than that. Again, our church wasn't big into this salvation and taking Jesus as your Savior, and the way we're focused on so much now. And I also remember churches talking a lot more about hellfire and brimstone back in those days than they do now. Everything is a lot about forgiveness these days. I've seen the Christian church evolve in my lifetime, subhanAllah. So there I was in New York with all this filtered information, rather well-read, well-traveled, in my middle 30s, singing full-time finally.
You're professional, successful.
Yes, I sang, alhamdulillah, at this point I was singing professionally as a soloist in New York. I sang with, not always as a soloist, but part of an ensemble that sang with the New York Philharmonic, Zubin Mehta, Leonard Bernstein, Luciano Pavarotti. I was involved in
Interesting.
all those. I made
These big names.
all these big names,
Wow.
yeah. And I made debuts in Carnegie Hall and Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts at Avery Fisher Hall and Town Hall. So those are all rather major accomplishments.
So basically, you were a celebrity, and you.
No, I was not a celebrity. I want to go. No, I will not. You sound like my mother. No, I will not go there. Yeah, subhanAllah. So I was singing and making a living at it and loving every minute of it. So my best memories are just merely sitting in this beautiful paid chorus that was the chorus of the New York Philharmonic, sitting in front of Zubin Mehta for several hours rehearsal and several evening performances. The audience gets his back. We get him, Leonard Bernstein in front of us, mashallah. Wow. And glorious music, 100 of the best young singers in New York City, all interesting also, kind of like the imam in the masjid. No one can do anything without that beat of one man in front. I mean, if the orchestra decided not to follow this downbeat or the chorus didn't follow him, it would be a mess.
Correct.
We all had to agree that when conductor says this, you start. When the imam says Allahu Akbar, you move.
You move.
Yeah.
Please stay tuned. We're going to take a short break and come back to continue our conversation with Sister Noor.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي أنزل على عبده الكتاب ولم يجعل له عوجا قيما لينذر بأسا شديدا من لدنه ويبشر المؤمنين الذين يعملون الصالحات أن لهم أجرا حسنا ماكثين فيه أبدا وينذر الذين قالوا اتخذ الله ولدا ما لهم به من علم ولا لآبائهم كبرت كلمة تخرج من أفواههم إن يقولون إلا كذبا
Assalamu alaikum again and welcome back. Sister Noor, we stopped where we are talking about your career and singing in front of this highly celebrated names in the music world.
I'm so fortunate.
And you were really excited about your career.
I loved it. It was fun, such great fun. And getting paid for this also.
It's marvelous to have fun and get paid for it.
Yeah.
That's
to love what you do and get paid for it
is
is just, subhanAllah, nothing better than that.
Take us to your first contact now. You have a lifestyle.
Yes,
you have
definitely. Yes.
Your career now. You are in your 30s, you said. And now you came in contact with Islam for the first time.
Yes.
And the life of musicians generally, is not compatible with the Islamic life.
No, really not.
However, you discovered Islam. What happened? Take us through those early days when you came in contact with Islam. How and when you made the decision, that's the path I want to take.
Okay, inshallah. Well, I love coffee. This is something that's known about me, and I often say I became a Muslim because of coffee. And of course, kahwa is an Arabic term, anyway.
Yes.
And I was new to a new neighborhood on the Upper West Side in Manhattan, and I was looking for my coffee haunt. And I knew the great places in New York to get coffee. I even led the entire New York Philharmonic to a tiny little place that had the best coffee near Lincoln Center once. I discovered this, run by a Syrian, interestingly enough. But I was looking for a new place for coffee in my neighborhood, up around 94th and Broadway. And a place I'd never noticed before, a little coffee and sweet shop. Looked in the window and The guy inside looked kind of scary, a little bit of a beard going, and
Okay.
I thought, looks Middle Eastern, I don't know, these guys, I was very tall, very fair, very much bothered by men on the streets, and as a performer, looking the part on stage and off. So, of course, I was attracting that to myself, too. A lot of catcalls from construction workers and being ogled on the subway, which was fine when it was maybe the guy in the Wall Street business suit, but not so fine when it was construction worker, okay? So I looked and I said, such a melting pot of people of many colors, but everybody always seems to be attracted to the tall, fair, Midwestern-looking, smiley girl. So I thought, I'm not sure I want to go in there. But I was really desperate for coffee one morning while I was waiting for a ride to go off and do a small show for school children with New York City Opera. And I ran in to get coffee, and the man was very nice. He was very polite and very welcoming, and we chatted for just a minute, and then I ran out the door and got my ride and went on. The coffee was amazing. To this day, it's the best coffee I ever had.
Excellent.
But again, I wasn't that encouraged to go back. And in New York, we have to do our laundry outside of our apartments and things. And the laundromat was just a few doors down from the coffee shop. And as the law would have it, it was spring. The door to the coffee shop was open. The door to the laundromat was open. And the smell of that lovely coffee was drifting out down into the laundromat. And I said, oh, I have to sit here for about an hour. Let me just go get a cup of coffee. I'll grab the coffee. I'll run out and I'll come back. And I went in for the coffee and I stayed for about 2-3 hours and forgot about my laundry. The man was from Egypt. He was so polite. I was not used to this in the music business. I was not used to this on the street. He was very mannerly, a lot of this kind of gesture with me, and very polite, very gentlemanly. And I said, oh, how refreshing. And for me, I enjoyed meeting people from different parts of the world. Even growing up in Wisconsin, which was all blonde hair, blue eyes, Germanic and Nordic people, and no people of color whatsoever, I was always attracted to know, as Allah says in the Quran, He made us different so that we would want to know each other. I was always interested in knowing other people based on the color of their skin or their nationality, whatever. So I said, oh, Egypt, how cool is that? I've never met an Egyptian. Tell me about Pharaoh. Tell me about the pyramids. Tell me everything.
Interesting.
Yeah, and we got talking. And then he mentioned he was a Muslim. And I told him, honestly, I have to tell you, I'm very embarrassed to tell you that I know a lot about different religions, but I know nothing about Islam. And I really didn't. This was the 80s. I had been busy singing for a decade full-time, and I wasn't paying attention to TV and Reaganomics and Iran-Contra and all those things. Blissfully unaware of Muslims, and really not seeing women in hijab or in Islamic attire on the street in New York, surprisingly.
Right.
This is before we had the big masjid on the east side. And I said, I don't know, but please tell me. I'd love to learn. Well, you say this to a Muslim, of course. They're going to tell you. And immediately he started telling me about the monotheism of Islam, how they believe in one God, and how perfectly they believe in one God. And somewhat different than Jews and Christians, but very, very similar. The same historical religious background, starting with Adam and Abraham, Noah, telling me these names, Jesus, Moses. And I said, wait, wait. You're telling me that there's another monotheistic religion in the world other than Christianity and Judaism? He said, yes. And you're telling me that you believe in all these same people that you just mentioned, Adam through Jesus and Moses and now Muhammad? He said, yes. And how many of there are you in the world? He said, oh, like 1.5 billion. And I said, what? How could I not know?
Wow.
How could me and my fellow countrymen not know this? I mean, that really hit me. How could we be so ignorant that we have sisters, brothers in faith in monotheism?
Of the population of the earth.
Yeah, and such monotheism. And I learned later when you go into the major book outlets here like Barnes & Noble, if you look at the religious books, you have Judaism and Christianity here, and Islam is over there in Eastern religions. And Eastern religions translates to an American like plurality of gods. Yes. Hinduism, Buddhism, like this. Yes. You don't think monotheism when you see that. It's over there in those Eastern meditation, We've got to change that. We have to change that.
We should.
Yeah, inshallah. But so our mindset is that. And I was shocked. I was so shocked. I was mad, like who's hiding this information from me? And why don't Americans know about this? So it was like a fish caught with a hook. I need to know more. So I would go every day for coffee and information. And I
So
would
now,
literally go
now
every day.
that was your daily routine.
That was my
you were
daily
avoiding
routine.
the place. It was not so attractive to you.
SubhanAllah, but Allah, like I said, Allah facilitated that little breeze to blow the coffee
This is the way
smell.
God's work.
Yeah, SubhanAllah, and coffee. And it was just fascinating. And one day I came in and I found him reading this beautiful book. And I'm an artist, so anything visual appeals to me as well. And the calligraphy was gorgeous. And small little Quran, but you know, the gilt edges and beautiful. And I said, oh, and what's this? Of course, the Holy Quran. And I said, I don't suppose there's any such thing in English. He said, oh, there is. Let me get one for you. And he had his minions out there, of course, you know, already hearing about this American that was interested in Islam. I had one there the next day. And it's interesting that the first one they gave me, I think it might have been Pickthall, meaning in English. And I started reading it. And I said, you know, it's great, but I feel like there's something more to this book. I'm not getting it. There's a deeper meaning that's talking to me, but I don't quite get it through this writer. Are there other translations, other meanings in English? She said, yes, we'll get you one. And they brought me Yusuf Ali. And subhanAllah, he manages to capture also the poetry that kind of exists in the Quran as well. And there's so much tafsir in his book. I fell in love with this book.
And commentary and tying it up also to the stories of the Bible and the historical events.
So helpful for a new Muslim. That was so helpful.
Yes.
And I would start reading it cover to cover. And I'd go into my friend, mashallah, who was very mainstream, and just teach me the basics, you know, not extreme to liberal or extreme. Yeah, exactly. And it was just a very simple little coffee shop, you know, an alley kind of coffee and sweets, that's it. He got to the point where he'd bring me a chair, and I'd sit behind the counter and learn about Islam. And I spent all my time there. And it's funny, the reaction I had from my colleagues. I started telling them, they would see me and they'd see me in the coffee shop and stop by and hug, kiss, kiss, the way we were in Hollywood, you know. Of course, he's a little bit when the men come and hug and kiss you already as an Egyptian Muslim. He didn't like that. And I would get comments like, oh, Muslim, huh? The girls would say, my best friend would say, what, you become ashamed of your body, you want to cover it? I said, no, you don't understand. The men would say, oh, the clever American is teaching the lowly Egyptian everything. I said, no, relax, opposite. He's teaching me everything. They didn't like that. They didn't like that.
Wow.
They didn't like to hear. They said that he will take you
supposedly they are living in the center of the melting pot in New York City, for God's
and these,
sake.
I used to think of my artist colleagues as the most enlightened people around me, subhanAllah. But this was the reaction, and I was becoming so convinced of this, you know, day after day, week after week.
So this information you've been receiving was resonating with you?
Oh, so much so. And
tell me something of the things you talked about with him, probably the concept of God or the Quran or the Prophet
yeah, definitely
Muhammad,
the concept
or
of
how
God.
Muslims view Jesus.
Yes.
So tell us about that, the conversation.
Yeah, exactly. The view of God was, I felt, this is one of the crucial things. There is such a huge concentration on knowing who God is by his attributes, by his 99 names, by what he can accomplish in the universe, what he does, what he creates. And the signs all around him. As I said, I grew up with nature, so you don't say subhanAllah, you don't say praise God when you're in a shopping mall. You say it when you're outside, you see a beautiful sunset, or you see the birth of the offspring of some animal or creature. We say subhanAllah in the spring when things come back to life, and even the beautiful burst of color in the fall before it all goes away. And
so however you look, you praise.
Yes, of course. But you don't in the city so much. We would run to the parks in New York City because it's all concrete. So no wonder they're not thinking about God, because they're faced with man-made things.
Surrounded.
Yeah. So
engulfed
again, I
in
was
it,
very
really.
fortunate that I was brought up with that eye to nature so much. And the verses in the Quran, mashallah, how they talk about God, they just resonate so strongly because you look at him as the creator, and you look at everything. I like to think in terms of everything is Muslim in that is small m, is that it submits to the law of God. Every creature that's been created has to follow God's orders one way or another. Everything other than the human being follows.
So you connected Islam and the submission from the beginning.
Yeah, it made such excellent sense. And again, I wasn't that young a woman. I had again traveled and read, and I suppose colleagues of more enlightened stature to some extent. And I think also music. I think what lies within music. Most of the great composers wrote being inspired by God. Bach certainly was all religious music. Mozart, Beethoven would compose his greatest works out in nature. They were very much in those days, the Baroque, classical, romantic eras, very much inspired by God. Their greatest works were often a requiem, which is a mass for the dead, Verdi, for example, or Mozart, Brahms. Some of their greatest works were very religiously inspired. So I was in all that, but not as you might view a typical Christian. I had a lot of Christian friends say afterwards, well, you were never any kind of a Christian. I said, well, what did that mean, you know? Well, you didn't understand Christianity, this is why you became Muslim. But for me, I began to see Islam as that was the religion because it didn't discount anyone else. It didn't discount a Christian. It didn't discount Jesus. Jesus was one of our prophets. We have to revere him. We have to respect him. We have to say, peace be upon him when we mention his name. The same with Moses. All the prophets and great men that I grew up with.
See, many people don't know this.
Yes, Abraham,
all
for example.
Great messengers and prophets of God are our prophets.
Are our prophets.
And
we
they
share
are
them.
equal
We
to
share
us
them.
as Muhammad himself.
Yes.
I mean,
and they are great men, pious men, inspired by God.
Chosen by God.
Yes.
To deliver his messages
exactly,
to us.
Exactly. And I think my nature is one based on fairness and equity. And I saw that so fair that there doesn't have to be only one right way. You know, Islam has an umbrella for all these religions. There's a verse in the Quran that says, Abraham was neither a Jew nor a Christian, but he was pure in his faith.
Correct.
So that sort of answers everything. We don't have to, he wasn't labeled anything, Abraham. Well, what was he?
Hanifan.
Hanifan.
Pure of
exactly.
everything.
But yet we all claim him.
Labeless,
Jews,
let's
Christians,
put it that
Muslims
way.
all claim him as, you know, the father of our
Correct.
religion. And again, as Adam and Eve. And again, that story of Adam and Eve and Hawa, that there wasn't an original sin because, yes, both of them sinned. Both of them were whispered to by the devil, the shaitan, Iblis. Both of them sinned, eating of the fruit they were forbidden to eat. Both of them repented, and both of them were forgiven. But they were given a consequence of living outside the garden for some time. But so again, we don't carry that concept of original sin with us because what our understanding of the Quran is that they did sin, but they were forgiven.
And
they made their repentance humble and sincere repentance, and there is no way to that a child carries the sin of its father. So, and again, that was reassuring and resting and relaxing. I said, well, this just makes sense. This makes far more sense.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Excellent.
alhamdulillah.
And those conversations went for a period of time before you decided, I'm going to be a Muslim.
Yes.
Tell me about this period and the struggle you had until you made the decision.
I wish I could say it was a struggle. It really wasn't. SubhanAllah. It was just a natural progression.
To many, naturally we think of it as a struggle, intellectual, emotional, sometimes spiritual. But for some people, the blessed one, it comes so natural and so easy. So tell us about that move from this lifestyle now, because by now you know what's ahead of you if you become a Muslim. So share that with us.
Well, I was still singing full time at that time, and you know, again, that sort of balancing your life between the information you're getting and your life, your career, and so forth. And I had one of the best paying church jobs in Manhattan. It was on Long Island, paid extremely well for a Thursday night rehearsal and a Sunday service. And it was a Unitarian church, which is kind of the last jumping off place for Christians. It's a place where Christians and Jews can worship together because they really don't have a particular doctrine. They tend to look at Jesus as a great figure, but not necessarily even as a prophet, and certainly not God. Yes, as a deity. So, and we could sing anything there. It didn't have to be religious music. We would try out our operatic arias and crazy. And anyway, I was singing out there, and we were moving up to the Christmas season, which is very busy.
Singing there, a lot of people call this singing in churches a worship.
Yes.
And to you, was it a type of worship, or you just, I'm performing, it is a job for me, or?
For me, I think it varies individually, but for me, I felt like I have been hired by this church to be a leader in their worship services, and I need to lead. You know, and if you go to Christian services and even Jewish services, it's very much audience participation. People get up essentially kind of and perform in front of you, and the audience stands up, sings once in a while, and sits down. So it's almost more like an entertainment for me than a worship service. Now, when I have a basis of comparison. And we were leading the worship service along with the minister or the rabbi or the cantor. And a lot of churches had a lot of music. You know,
Yes.
they were known in New York for their music program. They had a concert series.
Mhm.
And I sang with many of those places. And I really felt it was my responsibility to lead the congregation and show as if I'm with you, I'm leading you to God in this way. So I sort of took that as a personal responsibility. Not all singers do. Not all singers do. But we were getting ready for the Christmas season at this Unitarian church. And busy, busy time of year. Very busy. And what they do would hire 4 or 8 professional soloists to beef up the soprano, alto, tenor, bass, choral section. And we were those singers. And our choir director came to us one night in a Thursday night rehearsal, and he said, you know, the people of the congregation are complaining that we say the word God too much in our songs. And we're going to substitute the word God now with love. So love did this and love did that.
That's interesting.
Yes, and I thought, this is really bizarre. I'm in a church, and they hear the word God too much. Why are we here on Sundays? What's the point? Wow. So that was the catalyst for me. I went home from Thursday night until Sunday morning, and I said, that's it. I'm a Muslim now. That's it. I'm over the edge. That's what I needed to just push me that final step. And on Sunday morning, I got up before church, and I took my shower. I made this ghusl, the Muslim wash, and I went to the church, and I said, guys, this is my last day. I decided to become a Muslim. They were horrified. What? You can't. It's Christmas. You can't leave us. We need you. We'll talk to the minister. We'll let you talk about Islam some Sundays. You know, just you can't leave. I said, no, that's it. I have to leave now. I went back. I left the church, went to the coffee shop. Alhamdulillah, he was there with one of his friends. I said, oh, great, 2 male Muslim men. 2 male Muslim men. You know, you can be my witnesses. I want to take Shahada. And they looked at me like, have you lost your mind? I said, no, I'm serious. And even one said, you know, she's an actress. Probably doesn't. I said, I'm not acting, guys. You know me now, just 6 months. And I said, okay, what do I say? Yalla, come on, I know. I'm ready. Let's do it. And I struggled my way through La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah. And
that there is no God but the only
There is
one
no
true
God but Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger of God. And I took my shahada with these 2 guys, which I thought, look, this is plenty good enough. I have to have 2 male witnesses. There they are. And that was it.
Allahu Akbar.
Yeah, subhanallah. And then then the fun starts. Subhanallah. But then it was, oh dear, now I know a little bit more about Islam, and I know not only the Quran, but the modesty issues with women and men. And suddenly my career didn't look so appropriate anymore. Standing on a stage in beautiful costume and makeup and singing love songs or acting out these love triangle stories and operas didn't quite seem appropriate anymore. But what to do, that was my livelihood all my life. And, you know, of course, I prayed about it a lot, and I said, I really can't stay in this business, but I will let go of things one by one because I will financially be ruined if I stop everything immediately. And I would go to my conductors and things, and they'd say, I was planning the Bach B minor Mass for you this year, just for you. And I said, well, you know, it just doesn't work. And I held on to one job, which was New York City Opera. We did programs for elementary school children, teaching them about opera and classical music. Mm-hmm. And I had one other partner who was a born-again Christian, and I knew if we went off together, we'd just talk religion all day. I said, okay, that's not too bad, the 2 of us. And we're singing for children. And of course, City Opera was union work, and it paid very well. And I said, okay, that will tide me over till I decide, what am I going to do now?
Wonderful. Yeah,
subhanAllah. And then I sort of had to shut the door to my friends because, again, the antagonism was quite strong. And I knew what I had really was the truth. So you started now having some
obstacles in the way, losing friends, losing jobs.
They didn't push me away, but I felt I had to go away. I would go home and I would close my door and close my phone because I needed time to read my book, to really know my Quran, because I couldn't answer them yet. I couldn't answer those questions. Am I ashamed of my body? I want to cover it. I didn't have the wisdom, the knowledge that would come from reading the Quran.
But in your heart, deep in your heart.
Yes, yeah. But
you got the truth.
You know, I was never very good at arguing points anyway. So I said, okay, let me just be quiet in my apartment and read and become more studied, and then I can go back and address them better so they understand where I'm coming from. Some people were very kind, but a lot of them were, like I said, a little bit on the sharp side with me.
So now your world is really changing.
Yeah, very much
and
so.
Financially
Very much
you
so.
were
Yes.
concerned.
Yes, yeah.
And you're on your own, a young woman in New York.
Yeah,
and,
very expensive city.
Yes.
Very expensive city to live in.
How did you overcome this
Well,
obstacle in particular? Because
yeah.
it's scary, really,
Yeah.
for a lot of people.
I
And
stayed,
compromising your faith, your belief, your virtues for the dollar.
yeah, no.
A lot of Muslims and non-Muslims have issues
Yeah.
with this. I want you to elaborate how you overcome. How did you overcome this?
Well, Allah
Would you
helps a
please?
lot. What I did was, because I didn't want to compromise my values. You know, I was like that to begin with, and certainly now as a Muslim, I really, what I had found, what Allah had revealed to me, guided me to. I certainly couldn't compromise that now. I was much too full of it. It just encompassed me. I felt like all the puzzle pieces of life, not my life, but every life fell into place. Historically, religiously, in reading the Quran, it just all everything made sense. The whole idea of the
these value
creation of the
systems
universe
that
and all
our
these
religion
things.
has, it's no different. It's almost identical to
It
the
is,
same values
so
you
little.
find in Christianity or Judaism. This core value, unfortunately, many people abandon that for worldly gains, basically.
Exactly, exactly.
That's
And
what
that's
it is.
that's
Now
our
you came
test.
back to it, and it is a struggle. It really is. And many people now, when they hear this, they'll be shocked. Islam is a way of life. It's not a religion, rituals and rites you perform them in a temple and it is it. It involves even your earning a living. It involves
Exactly.
your relationships, your marriage, your everything about your
How
life.
you
now.
eat, how you sleep,
Exactly.
how you dress.
Elaborate a little bit on this, and now you're doing the transition, and it must be. I was born to a Muslim family. I didn't have to go through this struggle, but for someone at that age and that education and that career, suddenly, it's fascinating.
Yeah. SubhanAllah, sometimes I can't even quite explain it because I think Allah made it so easy for me. I really was able to look at that chapter of my life as a professional musician and say, Alhamdulillah, I did everything I wanted to do. I made music with the best people in the world, which was my goal, and I did it. I closed the chapter and I opened a new one. And it really, for me, SubhanAllah, was that easy. It is not that easy for everyone, but for me, it was that easy.
Beautiful.
There was the sort of the day-to-day struggle, but that spiritual struggle or emotional struggle was not there. I felt restful and peaceful, and this idea of this great peace that is part of the word of Islam and Muslim and Salam, in submitting to Allah and submitting to God and as one of His creations. And you find out how to submit to God within the Quran. And of course, if you submit to God in those ways He asks, as do all creatures in the universe, your life will be easy. It's why the universe moves itself along so beautifully, because all those elements in the universe submit not really by choice to God, they submit by design.
So what was the most intriguing point to you that attracted you? And I said, yes, this is it.
Well, I was reading a story of, I think it was Noah alayhi salam, Noah, and he was talking to his people and telling him about monotheism for, 950 years, poor man. Mm-hmm. And no one's listening, and even Allah tells us they used to put their fingers in their ears to shut him out, and they made fun of him. And something very telling they say to him in the story in the Quran is that, well, who are you, Noah? You're not from a big family. You're not from a moneyed family. You're not from one of the higher-ups. Yeah. Who are you? Why would we listen to you? Why would God choose you? Why would God choose you? And that's exactly how you feel as an artist. Well, who are you? Where'd you go to school? Who are you? Who do you study with? Mm-hmm. Where have you sung? They didn't listen to you sing. It was like, what's on your resume? I would hear people sing terribly, but they had an impressive resume, and the people would come back afterwards and say, oh, that was marvelous. It wasn't marvelous, it was awful, but they were just blown away by his resume.
Yes.
And, I said, that's it. That's my life exactly. That egotistical life of the performer, stand on the stage and listen to my beautiful voice. Wow. It's like the people of Noah, exactly.
So it's the ego issue.
Yes. And the ego is our downfall from the very beginning, the whole story of Adam and Eve. Shaitan or Satan or the devil doesn't want to submit to Allah's command to bow to Adam, this new creature of his, because he's better. He's made of smokeless fire as opposed to clay. And that's what brings
And
everybody
that's the
down.
original sin, actually.
Yes, of course. That's the
sin
original
of
and the
Adam.
big, and still it pulls all of us down if we look at the
It is
troubles in the
related to
world.
ego.
Yes, it's
Yes.
all connected to ego. And I lived in ego land, you know. That's where I lived. Probably a little bit rare bird in ego
We'll
land.
continue,
yeah,
but let us
inshallah.
take a short break, and we'll come back shortly to continue our very interesting conversation with Sister Noor. Stay tuned.
Muhammad, Muhammad, a special child was he.
To his early years as a special child.
God's prophet he would be. Muhammad, Muhammad, a special child was he.
Welcome back. Sister Noor, we want to close this period of time of your life in New York City. You became a Muslim, you had those obstacles, you started losing friends, you're concerned about your career, you abandoned many of the jobs you had, and you stuck with one until you find the next. What happened?
Okay. Well, New York City Opera ended as it does. You know, they didn't need us anymore that year. And then what? I have a big rent to pay, and what to do. I went back to the clerical agencies that I used to do the temporary work for, and they knew my work. And I used to work all over New York, and I was, alhamdulillah, good at what I did.
So you had some good work ethics.
Yes,
That's
I had
what
good work. And again, being a disciplined musician, most of us did well in that temporary clerical field. And they had an opening in their office for someone who would interview the incoming applicants. And they said, well, you know how to do this. You've been doing it for a while. We'll hire you in the office, and you can do interviews, and you know some computer. You can teach people computer skills. So I went back to working sort of the 8 to 5 job in New York, which I'd never had to do as a musician. I could go at different times of the day when the traffic wasn't so heavy. And now, as a very aware of my modesty and my proximity to the men around me, Muslim woman, and not covered yet by any way, but still dressing a little bit more modestly, I was very uncomfortable in rush hour in the subways and the buses where you're all mashed together like sardines. And I was like, oh, man there, you know. I was very uncomfortable, and I didn't like that. And I thought, oh, I've got to get out of New York. This is too much. And about this time, my mother was going to move to a new townhouse. And I said, I'll go home for a while and take a breather. And I was trying to find a new, less expensive apartment as well. And I said, I'll just go home for a while and help my mother move. And I went back to Appleton, Wisconsin, and I never came back to New York except to visit. I couldn't face New York. It wasn't the same as my life as a singer. It wasn't so easy to negotiate New York as a Muslim woman. And I have a lot of funny stories about trying to dress modestly in New York also, where I would start to wear long sleeves and longer skirts below my knee, but still the hair and the makeup. And as I said before, the construction workers were often catcalling the women as they walked by the street. And one day I thought, okay, I am just the modest queen today. I have my long sleeves and my longer skirt. I'm just going to march by in all my regal modestness, and they will recognize that. And a young woman in front of me was wearing a mini skirt, high heels, short top, and just walking the walk. Dun, 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 dun. And of course, they went crazy when she went by. And I said, oh, alhamdulillah, not me, not today. And I sort of glided by them, and they did the same thing. Because I still had the hair and I still had the makeup, they made the same noise for me, even though I had the longer sleeve and longer skirt. They catcalled after me just like they did her. And I said, this is not enough. I really need that scarf. And I need, you know, to dispense with the hair and the makeup and all that. Yeah, subhanAllah. So that taught me a big lesson. In later years, when I went back to New York and I was covered, the only people who really looked at me were the Muslim cab drivers who would cut across 6 lanes of traffic to pick me up and say, what, you a Muslim? SubhanAllah.
Jump in, we'll take you where you want to go.
Yeah, SubhanAllah. So, you know, it was difficult in New York. So I went back home to stay with my mom, and then that opens another chapter of struggle a little bit, living in Wisconsin and with my family.
We want to talk about that when we continue
Inshallah.
in our next episode.
Inshallah.
Thank you for watching. Please continue watching episode 2 with us, talking to Sister Noor and experiencing now the obstacles she has, after she became a Muslim, moved from New York to Wisconsin, and started a new chapter of her life. Thank you for watching.
سبحان من تعن الوجوه لجوده وله سجود أوجه عجباه سبحان من شهدت بوحدته العالم